All right, let's dive right into one of the most fascinating topics out there. Today, in this explainer, we are going to systematically unpack what is universally recognized as the absolute greatest, most profound verse in the entire Quran, Ayat al-Kursi. It's a verse from Surah al-Baqarah, and its core theme is essentially Allah describing himself. Now, this is some incredibly dense theology, but don't worry, we're going to break it down piece by piece. But before we get into the actual text, let's start with a really universal question. Think back to when you were a kid. You probably hit your parents with that classic question at some point. Hey, if my parents created me and their parents created them, well, who created God? Right? It's that classic paradox of infinite regress. If A was created by B and B was created by C, the chain literally never ends. Unless, of course, there was something that was always there, completely uncreated and absolute. And this verse directly answers that exact childhood question by introducing the concept of an eternal, self-sustaining creator. So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the verse itself, explore Tawheed and the divine attributes, look at how that goes beyond human weakness, check out the rules of intercession, explore absolute knowledge, and finally look at its importance in daily life. Let's start with section 1, the greatest Quranic verse. This verse kicks off with an absolute powerhouse of a statement. It says, Allah, there is no deity except him, the ever-living, the sustainer of existence. These opening lines really set the stage for everything that follows. It's not just a poetic intro, it's a meticulously crafted theological baseline that tells the believer exactly what kind of entity they are worshiping.
Moving right along to section 2, Tawheed and divine attributes.
To really grasp these divine qualities, we have to look closely at that opening phrase, because it fundamentally establishes Tawheed, which is the belief in the absolute oneness of Allah. By explicitly stating there is no deity except him, the text is forcefully shutting the door on polytheism. It entirely rejects the idea of multiple gods, or really any other being worthy of worship. He's the sole creator who kicked off the universe, and he's the only one who will remain when it eventually ends. Now, what's really interesting here is how the verse lists these perfect attributes to answer our initial hook about the uncreated creator. We see Al-Hayy, the ever-living, and Al-Qayyum, the self-subsisting. Basically, this means he sustains his own self. He doesn't rely on a single other thing to exist. Then we have Al-Ali, the Most High, and Al-Azim, the Most Supreme. And these aren't just fancy titles. They are inherent, perfect qualities that establish his absolute, total independence from the universe he created.
All right, section 3, beyond all human weakness.
The text specifically states that no slumber can seize him, nor sleep. And let's be honest, sleep and slumber are fundamental human weaknesses. Picture this. If you sit in a chair working at your desk or invigilating a test for 4 hours straight, your back starts to ache, right? You physically need to rest. You might even start dozing off in the afternoon. But this text draws a definitive hard line. Divine perfection means Allah never tires of guarding and preserving the heavens and the earth. He has absolutely zero need for rest.
Furthermore, this explicit mention of God never slumbering actually acts as a direct theological negation of certain other beliefs. For instance, in the biblical tradition, there's the Christian concept that God created the earth in 6 days and then took a rest on the 7th day, Sunday. Ayat al-Kursi explicitly counters this idea. It makes the Islamic view crystal clear. The Creator does not and did not require any rest whatsoever.
Which brings us to section 4, the rules of intercession. So how does this relate to salvation on the Day of Judgment? The verse asks, who is there that can intercede in his presence except as he permits? So the crucial takeaway here is that intercession is strictly conditional. No saint, no peer, no noble family tree is going to automatically save someone. It's a very strong Islamic belief that Prophet Muhammad will intercede for Muslims, but the source text makes it unequivocally clear that even his intercession is entirely dependent on Allah's direct permission. You can't just ignore your faith your whole life and expect a free pass through a proxy. It just doesn't work that way. Let's look at section 5, absolute knowledge and power. The verse states that God knows exactly what is before people and what is behind them, meaning the complete past and the complete future. Human knowledge, by comparison, is incredibly limited. There's this brilliant analogy from the source material. Imagine total human knowledge as just a single, tiny dot on a massive dinner plate. Think about it. Humans couldn't reach the moon or plan trips to Mars centuries ago because we simply weren't permitted that knowledge yet. Those scientific milestones only happen because mankind is finally allowed to access that tiny dot of understanding. No one grasps any of his knowledge except what he actively wills us to know. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer mind-bending scale of God's authority. The verse mentions that his kursi, which is often translated as his throne or footstool, extends over the heavens and the earth. To really grasp this, the source references a hadith stating that the kursi is just a footstool. Compared to the arsh, the highest throne, the kursi is like a tiny ring tossed out into a vast, endless desert. It's a metaphor designed to make the human mind truly recognize the staggering, unimaginable supreme power being described here.
Finally, Section 6, Importance in Daily Life. Now, we've been talking about some incredibly lofty theology, but what does this mean for a Muslim on a regular Tuesday? The practical impacts are actually deeply psychological and behavioral. Reciting this verse daily actively revives a Muslim's core belief in Tawheed. It builds this 24/7 reliance on Allah, because they are constantly acknowledging an ever-living guardian who never sleeps. Plus, remembering that dot on a plate metaphor, that forcefully reduces human arrogance. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have, your knowledge is a drop in the ocean. And because the rules of intercession are so strict, it actually motivates believers to get out there and strive for good deeds, rather than just coasting and hoping someone else will save them. And this translates into very specific actionable habits. The source text highlights that Muslims recite Ayatul Kursi before going to sleep, believing that Allah appoints 2 angels to protect them all night long. Even more amazing, there's a powerful tradition that if a believer recites this verse after every obligatory prayer, the literally only thing standing between them and entry into Jannah, heaven, is death itself. Talk about profound spiritual security. So, we've unpacked the immense theology of Ayatul Kursi today, from tackling infinite regress to realizing the humbling scale of the divine. But I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. If every single human scientific milestone, from stepping on the moon to launching rovers to Mars, is merely a tiny dot of knowledge that we are finally just allowed to discover, how does that radically reframe your view of human achievement? And more importantly, what does it say about our true place in the universe?